Hello again. I wanted to clarify what I was talking about. Well, let me do this. With the pupillary reflex, ignore what I said earlier. I was having a massive brain fart. I was getting two different types of pupil eponyms confused. So if you remember, I was talking about the Marcus gun pupil. Are we frozen? Nice. Whoa. Okay, so if you remember, I was talking about the Marcus gun pupil, and I want to compare and contrast Marcus gun pupil versus the Argyle Robertson pupil. This is the relative afferent pupillary defect, and it's in the name, so ignore what I said last time. It's an afferent defect, so it's a defect in the afferent limb, so that's cranial nerve 2. So please, I've told you completely wrong, so ignore that during the vision lecture. Argyle Robertson pupil is also called prostitute's pupil for two reasons. One, because it's a highly specific sign of third stage neurosyphilis, and two, this one's kind of crude, but the pupils accommodate, but they don't react. So they accommodate in the sense that their eyes converge when you bring an object close to them for near vision, but they don't react to light. So this is the one that is seen in diabetes. This one over here, the Marcus gun pupil, is seen in multiple sclerosis because they often present with something called optic neuritis. So let's start with the relative afferent pupillary defect. First of all, some terms. So when you shine the light into a normal eye, and then both pupils should constrict, that is called a direct and consensual response. So if you swing flashlight test from the normal eye to the affected eye, then the pupils constrict less, okay? And both pupils constrict less, and it will appear that they're dilating because you're moving from a state of shining light into the normal eye, both are constricted, taking the light away from the normal eye and going to the affected eye, and both pupils appear to dilate when you swing the flashlight. And that is due to optic nerve. The afferent limb is affected. Okay. The Argyle Robertson pupil, or prostitutes pupil, is seen neurosyphilis. Diabetic patients can have it. Diabetic, they get eye problems all the time. And something kind of weird is, the accommodation response and the pupillary response to light are both cranial nerve 3, but diabetes, nerve palsy in the eye, tends to hit, if I remember right, tends to hit the parasympathetics more. Okay, so the parasympathetic response of cranial nerve 3 is hit in this into ischemic event. That happens in diabetes. There's a high yield reason why that happens. The So cranial nerve 3 is the oculomotor nerve, so it also allows you to move your eyeball. But because of the anatomy of where the parasympathetic fibers run versus the pure motor fibers, it hits one and spares the other. But don't worry about that. Let's see if I can. Okay, quick word on muscle reflexes. One slide, nice. Okay. So I want to boil this down. We're just going to take one example, the patellar, the knee jerk reflex. So how does this happen? The extensor muscle, which is the quads, because the quads extend the knee and the hamstrings flex the knee. Extension, kicking out, right? That extensor muscle gets stretched, and muscle spindles respond to stretch in the muscle. It sends primary afferent neuron, remember this terminology, this first order primary afferent neuron, goes up, travels through the dorsal nerve, dorsal root ganglion, and there's that pseudo-unipolar, remember that type of neuron. Has this cell body and then two arms. Anyway, DRG. I'll probably ask something on the test about DRGs because I feel like I have to, because that's what I do my research on. Anyway, this neuron does go up to the brain like we talked about with sensory information, but this is a reflex, so it's happening kind of like without the brain's input, right? It's just happening automatically, similar to how you pull your hand away from a hot stove immediately without going up to the brain and coming back down. Okay, your brain's still made aware of the information, but this is all happening kind of subconsciously and involuntarily if everything's functioning correctly. Anyway, this primary afferent neuron stimulates alpha motor neuron to the extensor muscle. So that is this activation right here, this little green. So it sends an interneuron to directly stimulate the alpha motor neuron for the quads. Then the quads contract, but simultaneously, there's the contraction. Simultaneously, that same primary afferent neuron also stimulates an inhibitory interneuron. So what happens when you stimulate an inhibitory interneuron? I don't know, what's 8 times -5? Get a negative number. So the net result is going to be inhibition. Oh, I just came up with that now. I like that. Okay, so primary afferent neuron talks with two interneuron. One interneuron stimulates the quads, and then the other interneuron is stimulated, but it's an inhibitory interneuron, and it inhibits contraction of the antagonist muscle group. Inhibits the alpha motor neuron to flexor muscle, in this case hamstrings. So the green is the quads, red is the hamstrings. The big takeaway, I'm going to write it really big. Interneurons. These interneurons are everywhere, and the definition of interneurons is it begins and ends within the central nervous system. So they're in the brain, the spinal cord, but they don't leave. And these are, if you want to think of them kind of like transcription factors, they regulate DNA, these are kind of like the master regulators of neuronal discharge. They're everywhere and they do a lot of stuff. There's a ton of regulation and modulation of nervous system input and output that we just do not understand. And a big reason for that is these interneurons are so diverse. Anyway, these interneurons is what allow for I think the majority of reflexes to happen, whether you're talking about the pain reflex, right, when the withdrawal reflex, that's what it's called, or the crossed extensor reflex, and but yeah, interneurons. Might ask a test question about that.